Well, frankly, there could not be a better time to have Scott Ritter as our next guest. And the size of the audience watching across all platforms right now indicates that the public agree with me. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome back to the mother of all talk shows, Scott Ritter. Scott, before we get on to what is actually happening, can you give us a word or two about what the Taiwanese were claiming an hour ago, that China was imminently about to, they say, invade, I'd say retake their own territory from the separatists who've held it since 1949. But either way you dice it, is it true? Is it accurate? Have you any intel on that?
You know, I'm not in the intelligence arena anymore, so all I get is what's available on open source information. According to multiple reports, including some out of China, there has been a military buildup in a particular geographic area opposite Taiwan that could be indicative of a preparation for military action to retake Taiwan, an invasion of Taiwan. What I don't see is the appropriate trigger for such an action. The Chinese have indicated a certain tolerance for stupidity out of both Taiwan and the United States. They've weathered trips by speakers of the House to Taiwan that appeared to give the Taiwanese government a legitimacy that the mainland Chinese would reject. They've tolerated American weaponry flowing into Taiwan in a manner that indicates more than just self-defense. And they haven't, taken action. This would be a precipitous action, one that I don't believe China will undertake. I think that this is a lot of hype at this point in time. I think there would have to be more triggers in place, not just talk of a trade war, but a trade war that actually became heated to the point where China felt that it had broken free of the limits of the economy and become geopolitical in nature, where military force now is required to resolve certain situations.
Maybe Donald Trump can offer to mediate between them. That could be his sixth war averted in 6 months. Let's turn to the wars that are and are raging and maybe about to escalate still further. I talked in my monologue about the reports. They're not confirmed by London, but Russian reports are clear enough that two colonels, and you're well aware of how important a colonel is and how much more important to find two of them, apparently tourists, war tourists who were keen on looking at the sites of former maritime battles in the middle of a Ukrainian military base stormed by special forces of the Russian Federation. And an MI6 operative as yet unnamed. The colonels are named and all their ranks and serial numbers are in the public domain. Does this have the ring of truth to it from your standpoint?
From my standpoint, the British have painted a target on every British national they send into Ukraine, regardless of their status, whether it be colonel, whether it be sergeants with the Special Air Service. We know the Special Air Service has deployed significant forces into Ukraine, or with the Special Boat Service, who are operating in the vicinity of Odessa, advising the Ukrainians on how to use a variety of weaponry. British technicians who are working with the Ukrainians on drone warfare, adapting technologies for deep strike. British intelligence specialists working in Ukraine to retrieve intelligence and package it and turn it over to the Ukrainians so that it can again be used to target the Russians. MI6 operatives who helped the Ukrainians plan a covert strike and assassinations against Russians inside Russia. All of these people operate inside Ukraine today. Their numbers are in the hundreds, and this is an act of war. And the Russians have indicated that they will treat them as combatants if and when the time comes when they fall into their hands. There's reporting that the Russians have been actively targeting SBS operatives and SAS operatives who are advising the Ukrainians. And I would imagine if the Russian special forces, special operations forces, were out there looking for Brits and suddenly these war tourists show up, that they're fair game. War tourism is just another code word for espionage, for carrying out intelligence activities. Having a pair of colonels do this, though, is where I start to where the narrative starts to lose me. People tend to forget that you don't become a colonel because you're a sprightly, young, athletic individual. You're a colonel because you've been around for a while. Your brain may work better than others because it's been stuffed with more information and you've had higher levels of command experience, but your knees don't work, your back doesn't work. The last thing a colonel wants to be doing is war tourism in an actual war. So this is where the narrative falls apart. Until I see the colonels paraded forward, in non-AI generated imagery, I'm going to treat this story with a little bit of circumspect.
Well, probably wise. Let's turn to undeniably significant developments. Donald Trump gave Russia 50 days, then it was 12 or 10 days, and then it was a named day, August the 8th. In between times, irked by, first time in history, that anyone has deployed nuclear weapons in response to a tweet, a mean tweet by someone not even in the Russian government. He's deployed, he said, two American nuclear-armed submarines, and the 8th of August is literally round the corner. What's your take on what's going to happen next?
Well, let's take the least of my worries here is the 8th of August. The president, in announcing the 50 days, he did that in tandem with Lindsey Graham, gleefully saying the president has, empowered our sanction plan. Lindsey Graham had been working with, I think, Richard Blumenthal out of Connecticut and others to, they said they had 80 senators on board for this massive sanctions plan against Russia. 500% tariffs put not on Russia, but on those who buy Russian energy. And they're going to bankrupt those people, and Russia will have no friends when this is done. Everybody will just abandon Russia because of the economic price they're going to pay. And then I guess the president got tired of being made a fool of by Russia's continued battlefield successes and diplomatic successes. And so he dropped it, as you said, to 10 to 12 days. And now we have August 8th as the day. What will happen on August 8th? I have a feeling that the president will announce sanctions. They're not going to be 500%. The number will range from 25% to 100% against nations buying oil. But already the Chinese told him to pound sand. It's hilarious to watch Scott Bessent, the Treasury Secretary, spin it the way he does. Because the Chinese said, we have our sovereignty. And he said, oh, well, that means that the Chinese are going to pay the 100% tariff. No, it means that the Chinese aren't going to pay anything. The Chinese don't care. They will retaliate if necessary. The Indians just came out and said, we'll buy oil from the Russians. We'll buy it. You can't tell us who to buy it from. And that was a surprise because the Indians have historically been somewhat soft when it comes to responding to pressure from the United States. But, here Indian sovereignty is absolute. And the Indians have said that the Brazilians have said, we don't care. That's why the president declared a national emergency and targeted the Brazilians separately. And so this will have zero impact. So I think there's an additional aspect that we'll probably see on August 8th. And that is we will start to target the seized Russian assets. And I think you're going to see some creativity on how we take these assets and deploy those funds in support of Ukraine. Now, this is a major escalation because this is outright theft. Up until now, we've just been stealing the interest that's been accumulated from these. It's still theft, but I think now we're going to start targeting the principal. And this will, of course, have to get, we'll create the necessity of a Russian retaliation. And remember, there is hundreds of billions of dollars of Western-owned assets in Russia that won't be Western-owned assets by the time this is finished. This is going to hit hard. The stupidity of this move is beyond belief because it's not going to change any outcome on the battlefield. In fact, what it will do is steal Russia's resolve into understanding that there is no diplomatic off-ramp, so there's no reason to create the conditions for a diplomatic off-ramp, and now is the time to double down and just put the pedal to the metal and get this war over with, again, on a timetable acceptable to Russia, meaning they're not going to do big arrow, big casualty events, but this war of attrition will now just be ratcheted up and the meat grinder will grind up even more Ukrainian meat. So all the people that say that we're doing this to help the Ukrainians, it's an outright lie. We're just doing this to guarantee more Ukrainians are going to die. Now we come to the one that bothers me the most, because this is as dangerous as it gets, George. It on the one hand, you have to sort of chuckle. I mean, Dmitry Medvedev's mean tweet scored. I mean, if you're going to troll the internet, he just got the President of the United States to deploy strategic nuclear forces in response to a mean tweet. I mean, maybe not what he wanted to do, but I mean, come on, in terms of trolling the motherlode, baby, he just did it. Now, it may cost us all our lives, not because of Medvedev, but because of Trump. Trump deployed or claims to have ordered the deployment or redeployment of 2 Ohio-class submarines, and this is a very important term that I'm about to use, closer to Russian shores. I'll tell you why this is scary and should scare the daylights out of everybody. Closer to Russian shores because of a tweet that Dmitry Medvedev put out in response to mean tweeting by Lindsey Graham and Donald Trump, which sort of hinted at not only the sanctioning of Russia, but also the possibility of a preemptive strike against Russian leadership. And so Medvedev said, look, this crazy talk, you guys might want to watch The Walking Dead to see what America is going to look like after a nuclear strike. And remember, we have the dead hand, even though then he said, if it exists. I'm here to tell you personally, it does exist. What is the dead hand? The dead hand was a system created in the 1980s by the then Soviet Union in response to increased nuclear strike capability by the United States. One of them was Pershing II missiles that were getting ready to be deployed to West Germany. The Pershing II, if launched from West Germany, could strike Moscow with a nuclear warhead within 7 to 12 minutes of being launched. And the Russians were not happy about this because this created the potential of decapitation. But there was also the Ohio-class submarine armed with these new Trident missiles. And the Russians feared a scenario, get ready what I'm about to say, where the Ohio-class submarines would come close to Russian shores, launch their Trident missiles on a reduced trajectory where they could strike Russian missile silos, command and control, and other facilities within 20 minutes of launch. The combined capacity of the Pershing II and the Trident submarine led the Soviets to say the United States has the ability to launch a very effective preemptive strike that could take out our command and control, take out our missiles, and we're in a lot of trouble. So they came up with what they call the dead hand, the perimeter system. This is a system of sensors, radiation detection sensors, seismic sensors, communications monitoring sensors, all of which have to function flawlessly 24 hours a day. Because if, for instance, they ever lose communication with their nuclear command center and they detect at the same time seismic activity, Kamchatka's earthquake should come to mind, people. There are ways of things happening. But if that seismic activity had, for instance, been matched with radiation detection and they lose contact, what the perimeter system does is it launches missiles not armed with warheads, but with communication broadcast capability that fly over Russian territory, broadcasting the launch codes, which automatically override everything, and everything the Russians have gets launched against the United States. It's real. I know. I inspected 3 of these missiles when I was in Votkinsk as a missile inspector. It's as real as it gets, ladies and gentlemen. It's not fiction. It's not. They're real. They exist. And even though Dmitry Medvedev didn't want to officially acknowledge his existence by a former president of Russia raising it to this level, it's real. And so what he's saying is if you attack us preemptively, you're going to die automatically. And what does the President of the United States do? Deploy 2 Ohio-class submarines using the exact same threat model that caused the Soviets to create the perimeter and the Russians to sustain the perimeter system. This is insanity. This is as dangerous as it gets, because now the Russians have to take this deployment seriously. They have to act as if the United States is preparing for a preemptive nuclear strike. And remember, nothing happens in a vacuum, because just prior to this stupidity in terms of the president's overreaction to a mean tweet, the president of the United States ordered B-61-12 gravity bombs, nuclear bombs, to be deployed to England for the first time. These aren't part of the NATO nuclear deterrence. This is an American strike package now that's been deployed forward to England, where we habitually or regularly base B-52s and B-2 bombers, F-35s that can carry the B-61. The B-2 and the F-35 are designed to carry the B-61. Now, you have the Russians monitoring this. You're saying, what are you doing? Getting ready for a preemptive strike against Russia? Which means now the new Russian doctrine is they're going to be increasing their alert threshold. And if they detect additional movement, the Russians may be called upon to preempt our preemption. We're at a situation now where this has stopped being funny. This is not about mean tweets and overreaction to the president being stupid and feeding every, meme generation device out there. This is about the survival of the world. And this president, he's not surrounded by advisors who are worthy of the name, because the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff should have resigned over this. You don't deploy Ohio-class submarines based upon a social media posting. The movement of Ohio-class submarines are some of the most highly classified. You remember when Hegseth and the former National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, got in trouble over a Signal chat room talking about aircraft deployments attacking the Houthi? This is non-nuclear. This is just conventional strike forces, and people went crazy, said, you put those pilots' lives at risk. Well, Mr. President, you just put the crews of 2 Ohio-class submarines at risk by announcing their movement. Now the Russians, the Chinese, everybody who's concerned about the Ohio-class submarine are looking for them, trying to find them. And the Ohio-class submarine's been around for more than 40 years. I will tell you, I have a high degree of confidence that both the Russians and the Chinese know how to track a moving Ohio-class submarine. So now that crew is at risk, because if they preempt a supposed preemption, that means that submarine is going to be sunk, and now they're going to die. Where's the outcry? Where are people saying, my God, Mr. President, you didn't just put all of humanity at risk, but let's get down to the brass tacks. You put the lives of those men and women on those submarines at risk through your irresponsible. This is the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff job. This is the Secretary of Defense. We got an ass kisser as the Secretary of Defense and an ass kisser as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. I apologize for my language, but there's no other way to say it. These are sycophants. These aren't the experts. These aren't the best of the best. These are guys who were simply put in their position because they'll do anything Donald Trump asks them to do. And that's not what we want as a Secretary of Defense and a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Well, that was a mesmerizing description of the danger we are in. Could Turkey somehow, I'm presuming these submarines, one of them at least, is headed for the Black Sea. To do that, they have to pass through the Straits, and Turkey has to agree. Or would the United States not even bother to seek that agreement? Might Turkey say, this is too escalatory a move, you don't have permission to enter the Black Sea through our waters?
I don't think an Ohio-class submarine is going to the Black Sea. It'll die. There's no way an Ohio-class submarine can operate in the Black Sea and survive. They won't even operate in the Mediterranean. The Ohio-class will operate in the Atlantic and in the Pacific. What will happen here is that the standard Pacific station, which is a classified location, they'll be leaving that, heading for forward stations, which probably haven't been manned or worked since the Cold War. So the idea is to get closer to the eastern border, or come in. If you're in the Atlantic, you're probably going to move up to the North Sea and come in closer to the Arctic Sea. And so you'll be operating in these areas. But the problem is you're moving through waters that are heavily monitored, both in terms of above sensors, but also below ground sensors. The Chinese and the Russians, just like we have put out fields of sensors that track movement. The Ohio-class submarine is a very large object that, as it moves, it's displacing water. And our ability to detect motion of this event has gone is out of this world. We now have artificial intelligence that goes in there to help read algorithms and read data. But no, to go to the Black Sea would have to surface, and the Russians go, "Thank you very much," and then it comes out of the Black Sea, and the Russians will have a submarine waiting for it right there when it comes out. And Ohio-class submarines don't travel alone. Usually, there's one or two American attack submarines hovering in the vicinity as protection, providing perimeter protection for the submarine. So as you move it, it's not just one submarine moving now. You're probably moving 3 submarines, the Ohio class and then 2 Los Angeles class or Virginia class attack submarines, providing some sort of screening and protection against any potential Russian submarine trying to hunter-killer trying to come up behind it. Again, the more submarines that are moving, the better chances of detecting it. But no, the Black Sea, no, and the same with the Mediterranean. We used to put Polaris and Poseidon class submarines there, but the Ohio class submarines, they're designed for the deep water of the Pacific and the Atlantic.
So the launch time from one of these submarines, remind us again, would be what? Did you give a figure of 20 minutes?
If you get the submarine close enough to the Russian shore, it's 20 minutes from launch to impact, because depending on the target being hit, but a lot of the Russian missile silos are built along. If you go and look at where the Trans-Siberian Railroad is and you track that and you move off of that, that's where a lot of populated areas are. And then you'll see that the missile bases are sort of plugged along that. A lot of them are in the central to eastern part of Russia. And if I get a submarine close enough, I can cycle off Trident missiles that'll hit their targets within 20 minutes.
Do you agree with the thesis I outlined in my monologue that this kind of terrifyingly dangerous escalation, especially when there is now no INF restrictions, this being the anniversary of it, that we really are on a fast road we're really on a super highway here. If conflict does break out, it will escalate at such a speed that it's quite bewildering to me how nobody except thee and me, and not many others, appear to be even aware, never mind concerned, that we've reached this point. You know, we used to have this doomsday clock. I mean, the clock is striking 12 right now, isn't it?
Yeah, I've long said, people keep saying, "Oh, the doomsday clock, we're 2 minutes to midnight. We need to pull it back." I said, we're at midnight. I mean, we're 1 millisecond away from the end of the world, because all we need is an act of stupidity. And we just got the supreme act of stupidity. The President of the United States, based upon a mean tweet, redeploying 2 Ohio-class submarines. At the same time, he's stocked England with B-61-12 gravity bombs. George, I just wrote a book called Highway to Hell, the Armageddon Chronicles. It basically tracks this very problem from 2014 until this year. The analysis that I've done over the years about, the importance of arms control, and with the deterioration of arms control, deterioration of relations, the hyping up of nuclear capabilities without any checks and balances, we're on a literal highway to hell, where one mistake, one miscalculation, one misinterpretation of data leads to the death of everybody, not 1 or 2. We all die. If you don't believe that, I'm sorry. I can't say, aha, see, I was right, because you'll be dead. And I'll be dead. But this is as dangerous as it gets. I mean, when I wrote the book and I published it, people said, "Oh, Scott, you're just you're fear hyping." No, the reason why I published this book now is because this is the reality we live in. This is the most dangerous thing in the world. Last fall, the CIA at a time, in November, December, estimated that we were over 50% chance of having a nuclear war before year's end. I was saying it back then too. People, "Oh, you're just fear mongering." No, when you have Admiral Buchanan of the director of plans for the Strategic Command briefing a Washington, D.C. think tank that the United States at that time was ready to engage in a nuclear exchange with Russia. Guys, that's nuclear war. A nuclear exchange means a nuclear war. And he said, we're ready to do it now. Oh, and we think we can win. But then he said something interesting, and this needs to sink into your audience here. He said, maybe it's time we be more honest with the American public about what winning means. Because he said, if we have this nuclear exchange, life as you know it will never be the same. You will not live in your nice little suburban home, be able to hop in your car, get gasoline, drive to a store, buy groceries and all that. You will live under martial law where food and everything is rationed. You will not live with electricity or air conditioning. You'll be living in a much more Spartan environment. Your life will be hell because you may have to wear protective gear to protect against radiation. You may be living underground. There won't be many of you left because everybody will be dead, but we'll have won a nuclear war, so hooray, hooray for us. This is the reality of nuclear war. The government knows this. They know exactly what's going to happen. There will be no surviving a nuclear war, even if we quote unquote win it. So wake up, people. This isn't something to chuckle at, a little mean tweet exchange and all that. This president is going to kill you. He's going to kill all of us unless people stand up and say no to this president. This is where we need a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff who hasn't been handpicked by the president and his sycophantic Secretary of Defense to do whatever the president wants. We need a Secretary of Defense who says, Mr. President, the redeployment of Ohio-class submarines through social media is ill-advised, and I have to respectfully refuse to execute this order. I'm not ordering those submarines to move because you put them at risk. If you want to move them, we'll move them at a later date, but we're not going to tell anybody about it. I need a chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff that says, preemptive nuclear war, which it appears you're preparing to go, would be unconstitutional because it violates international humanitarian law. It violates the notions of, reciprocity. What are we attacking them for? What have they done? A mean tweet? You're going to threaten nuclear war because of a mean tweet? That's not reciprocity. That's, it's no. But we don't have that. We have people who are just saying, yeah, way to go, Mr. President. And we have a whole bunch of cultists here in the United States who think everything this president does is genius when it's not.
I had several other questions to ask you, but that's such a perfect point to end on for now. And take a rain check, if you will, once I've read your book. How do we buy your book, the Armageddon book you were just talking about?
Highway to Hell. You can get it on Amazon.com, BarnesandNobles.com, or you can get it straight from the publisher at ClarityPress.com. It's right there. Look, I wrote this book for a reason. And the reason is exactly what we're talking about. This book was published last fall, actually earlier this spring. It was written last fall, published earlier this spring, because I felt that we were headed down a highway to hell. There's a reason why I use that title. We're on a highway to hell. How do we get off this highway? And it's up to you, me, and everybody else. You're doing God's work, George, by bringing this out. But for us to talk until we're blue in the face does no good. Our words have to be translated into action. And I'm going to be doing my best. I've got a Project 38, which is designed to help, extend arms control and prevent this very thing. You're doing your work. We need other people to step up too. Sitting at home waiting for other people to do this job. In the movie I'm making, 38 Minutes, which tracks on the 38 minutes of terror that existed in Hawaii back in 2018 when a missile launch was declared. It turned out to be a false alarm, but for 38 minutes, the people thought a nuclear missile was going to hit them and they were all going to die. And I want to capture the terror that they felt and then ask the audience, if you, knowing you're going to die, that missile's coming in, if you could go back 6 months, what would you be willing to do to stop that missile from being launched? And why aren't you doing it now? I'm doing everything I can right now because I fear in 6 months. Go ahead.
Yeah, I can't wait for the book. I hope that I've got time to read it before the highway to hell accelerates to the point of no return. And the movie sounds great too. It really is an honor to regularly talk with you, Scott Ritter. You are a great educator, And if people have got any sense, they'll wake up before they can no longer smell the coffee or even the skin of their children. Scott Ritter, thanks for joining us.